We are back, episode 13. We are live, at least for our sake, we're live, not for our audience.
Feeling alive.
Feeling alive, yeah, alive and living. That's a good thing too, right? Not to go through life sleepwalking. We are alive and living. As always, my name is Dominic DiFranco. We have alongside me my wonderful co-host, Chris Doyle.
Thank you.
And we have an awesome guest here today. Hits home here in Cleveland, the CEO of the Metroparks, Brian Zimmerman. We appreciate you coming out. Brian, if you can, please let our guests know, first of all, who it is you are and a little bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. You know, elevating Cleveland has really been something I've been doing since I got here in 2010. I got recruited to be the sixth head of the Cleveland Metroparks as the CEO back in, again, 2010. I had come from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was number 2 in charge of a 15,000-acre park system. I coached high school wrestling there at Marquette University High School. I officiated wrestling, but have really enjoyed my time here in Cleveland working for the Park District. Our Park District has now grown to more than 24,357 plus acres. That includes a world-class zoo, 8 golf courses, 18 park reservations, and a whole host of wonderful activities that include snowshoeing right now in the chalet as we're talking about winter.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we just had this big snowstorm last Thursday.
Right.
You know, Brian being from Wisconsin's kind of laughing over there, you know?
Yeah, my Jeep is sitting up on a pile of snow outside of your office. I'm just like, you're looking for fun things to do. And I think it's one of those things where, snow is one of those things that I think should calm the earth, right? It's one of the things where it kind of should level set things to a certain degree. And when you get a chance to go out and, hear, the wind through the trees or the snow falling, that's one of those things where I think recreation can help recreate the mind. And that's where these, 24,000 acres really come into play. But yeah, snow can be a challenge for some people for sure.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you also mentioned too, prior to us coming in here, that you own a farm as well. So like nature obviously has been a big thing for you your entire life. Where, I mean,
very relevant.
Were you like sneaking off like as a kid going to the local pond to fish? Were you hunting? I mean, like tell us a little bit about that and like why the Metroparks and how you got there.
So I actually grew up on a 220-acre farm south of Madison, Wisconsin. My parents farm almost 1,000 plus acres, and I wrestled, all through high school. And we had about right now there's 185 head of cows. So I got into the world of soil science. I actually built golf courses for a living, which was kind of a really unique thing. My grandfather was a dairy farmer all of his life, and when he got done farming, he needed something to do because he was always up early in the morning. And we either had to go pick rocks. He had he grew lima beans, he grew sweet corn, all sorts of unique vegetable crops. But then when we were done, we got to go play golf on the early mornings. And I absolutely fell in love with like being outside. And so that connection to nature, planting trees, kind of like coalesced out of years of building and rebuilding golf courses, taking on more leadership roles. We had a plan when I got recruited to Michigan to, it was a 10-year plan to rebuild this golf course. And I said, do you really want to be torn up for 10 years or do you want to do it in 3? They're like, how about 3? So we fast forwarded everything. They had the money. We finished it. I still remember Dr. McCarthy, who was a surgeon at Rush Memorial Hospital in Chicago. He goes, you're working too fast. And I said, I don't know any different. I said, that's just, that's kind of how we're built. We're tenacious. We get things done. And he goes, no. He goes, you're working too fast. He goes, you're going to leave. He goes, you're not going to want to just taking care of the golf course. Sure enough, about 3 weeks later, I got recruited to run 16 municipal golf courses back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So moved the family back to Wisconsin. Took over after 3 years of running the golf courses, took them out of a deficit situation to running 156 parks and 15,000 acres at age 33.
So there's something to be said about just being in nature. You know what I mean? Like, so I graduated from BW, and literally BW's in the Metro Park, right? Or we're right next to the Metro Park. And I just remember sometimes when you just get very stressed or, the workload's too much or, you have like all the different pressures that you have as a college kid. I always found myself like the most happy in just being able to push everything away when I went to the Metro Park. Yeah. You got to hear, we have the creek right there. Listen to it. You hear the wind breeze through everything, and then it just was amazing. It really de-stressed me. So I mean, what we're doing with the Metro Park is just absolutely amazing. I think and
absolutely.
I think that kind of stinks now for people who are kind of locked in their houses most of the time and have to stay inside. They don't get that that being able to be in nature as much.
Yeah, that appeal and the benefits that come with it.
We were just talking about this. When was it? this week, right? Or last week.
I feel like
we
it
were
comes up
talking
a lot. Yeah.
It does,
Yeah, it
yeah.
comes up a lot. I know it was certainly mentioned even like last week with Laura Volpini, who you mentioned, right? Small world, right? About just like biking and outdoor and being outdoor and
Yes.
just kind of, and I like what you said about winter. I agree too. Like a lot of people, especially in Northeast, it's so funny. Like I feel like in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, everybody, you always see the bumper stickers of like stuck in Ohio. It's like, dude, it's on the truck that you could drive out of here. Like just go. Like you get the same weather every single year.
Yeah.
I think if you come to appreciate the winter, you do find, I think we just naturally flow with nature, but like there's with the seasons of it, in winter, it is a very still time. And where you do, like, everything just calms down. It's like the time of rebirth coming in the spring. And it is wonderful. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And obviously, you get a lot more snow up and a little bit more cold up in Wisconsin, right next to the frozen tundra. So
That's actually how we met, actually, if you remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
A number of years ago, you were wrestling for Baldwin Wallace, and we had just finished the stairway, the staircases all the way up to Fort Hill Stairs.
It's the we call it the stairway to heaven, right?
Oh, yeah?
Well, how many steps is it? It's
155.
Dude, you want to work out? You go run like 5 sprints.
This
up
is
that
at
thing.
BW on the campus?
No. This is Rocky River Reservation.
Oh, okay.
In the nature
One of the
center.
reservations.
In the nature center. It's beautiful because you get to the very peak of it and you're overlooking the valley. It is breathtaking. But yeah, that's where we met because you guys had just finished it and we had a workout that morning. So it was like 6 a.m. We went out there and we just did like, I think maybe 5 or 10 sprints up.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was one of the things where when we opened it, Mike Dirkelect, our aquatic biologist, that's a really significant area of the park because the east and west branch of the Rocky River actually comes together there. The Shale Cliff Wall. I don't know if you saw Dunkalostes was in the news, the big prehistoric fish that sits in there. So do a little research on Dunkalostes. Very, very interesting fish that was there. But we got to meet because Mike Dirkelect wrestled for Baldwin Wallace, and he said, our workouts used to be on Fort Hill Stairs. You should have the wrestling team. So I called the wrestling team, and that's where Chris and I met was that morning. Eli, my Weimaraner, was there, and we went up and down the stairs. And it was kind of a foggy, it was pre-November-ish.
Yeah, it was.
A little bit chilly.
Yep.
And everyone was like, oh my goodness. And it is one of the best cardios. We have a gentleman, Earl, goes up and down the stairs. He's in his late 80s, and he has pennies in his pocket. And he moves 10 of them. So he's got 10 in the left. He goes up, moves one to the right pocket. And he just keeps moving them until he gets all 10 done. We have others that you'll see rocks on the side of the wall. It's the same thing. They move them down. So they always know how many times they've gone up and down.
Wow.
So firemen train there, EMS train there. People are going to the police academy. People are trying to get their heart rate up. I think people always think about, the weight loss and everything else. It's like, oh, it's not working. It's not doing what it's like, well, you're missing that heart rate. It's like, well, I walked 3.5 miles and I didn't lose any weight. It's like, well, that's okay. But your heart rate's got to be up in that fat burning.
Yeah.
Yep, it's got to spike. And so
Sure.
if you do Fort Hill Stairs, you can get your, heart rate activity
That'll
up.
do it.
And then
Just
you
by
do a loop
walking.
just by walking. But then the views are just absolutely breathtaking. Fall there, the fish, the spawning, unbelievable.
Wow. Let me ask you this. So I think there's something I don't want to overlook in what, as you said, when you moved your family back to Wisconsin to take over, it was 16 municipal golf courses. You said you brought them out of a deficit. I think there's a lot of value to be had there, and I'd love myself to hear it, but also our viewers as well, of like, what does that look like? Why were they in a deficit? And what did you apply that ultimately turned that around for those golf courses?
It's actually one of the defining moments probably in my career. I can remember being, kind of a junior at that point in time. So there was the park director and her cabinet, and I was the director of golf. And the county executive at the time, Scott Walker, who became the governor, who ran for president, came in with his whole entire team. So, it's interesting. We're sitting at a round table here. So significances of tables, right? Opposite sides, all views. So you learn something about setting a room up. The park director got to sit at one end. Scott Walker got to sit at the other end. His team got to sit at the square table, and all the rest of us were on the outside of the room. So, it kind of laid the foundation of what was going to happen here. And I remember the park director said to me, she goes, speak only when spoken to, and then don't speak. Okay, well, you're going to handle the conversation, and we'll just kind of see how everything goes. So they're going back and forth to contract these golf courses out because they're losing so much money. And then about halfway through the conversation, the park director looked and she goes, well, Brian, what would you do? I'm like, speak when spoken to, and then don't speak, I think is what she said.
Yeah.
Oh, well, here it goes. So I just started, in on the conversation. And I said, look, you're right on some of these accords, and here's where we're actually at. Here are the reasons why we're struggling to make ends meet. We're losing $2.8 million. And here's how we're going to actually reform the properties. We had to do a layoff. We had to restructure. We had to redo the contracts. We had to do a lot of things very business savvy. We had to allow for more outings. We had to allow for more per caps. Per caps are, if you have 200 golfers go through, and this is as simple as it is, sausage sticks. You like sausage sticks?
Sure.
Right? Okay, so we can buy a sausage stick for 9 cents. We sell them for $1. So I'm making 91 cents. I have 200 people go through, 200 people buy them. I'm up about $190. Okay, so how you look at a level of profitability is increasing your per cap. So we started doing all these small things where we were doing add-ons along the way. We do an event, you get a sandwich and a bottle of water. So you start adding things, and ultimately after a few years, we pulled them out of a deficit where they were actually returning money. The other thing very strategically we had to do is reinvest. And I think that's where some people forget. It's like, well, we just keep reaping the benefits, but if you don't put money back. I hauled this piece of pipe that was almost 8 feet high, galvanized pipe. It was an inch thick in diameter. And it was the most expensive pipe, I think, in the country. I was like, well, why do you say that? I'm like, well, this thing has been dug up by union labor 7 times and been repaired with like Band-Aids. And I said, this is indicative of 3 miles worth of pipe underground that you'll never see. But I said, that's why this golf course isn't in great shape. And I said, we have to change the narrative of how we're taking care of the properties. So every time I had a capital meeting, I drug this thing in my car down to the county courthouse where the offices were. And I always made sure that I dropped it a couple of times so that the rust fell off in people's offices so they wouldn't forget about it. Well, I got the first irrigation system after that. Then we got Brown Deer done. Then we did Dretzka. And so then they started to see the numbers even grow higher. And I said, look, when you reinvest and you lead through it, you can actually reap the benefits. So it was a defining moment because I was just like, either I'm going to get fired, because I was not, I was told not to speak. But I'm just like, they asked and here's how we could actually do it and throw out solutions versus, well, that's a problem. Because I think too often it's like, well, you got to come with solutions. And that's where this world has kind of gone, for me at least, finding solutions to things.
So Chris, remind our viewers again who it is we are and what we do.
Hey guys, both Dominic and I are loan officers here at Liberty Home Mortgage. So if you or anyone you know is looking to purchase or refinance a home, please email us at the elevateclepodcast@gmail.com. Subject line, looking to purchase or refinance a home. Email's in the description. Yeah, I think there's a good quote. Hesh always tells us, our CEO is, if you do what you have always done, you're going to get what you've always got, right? So reinvesting in those different things is huge. Again, you get very comfortable in a situation. Well, it's only so much time before something ends up happening where you end up, again, you're not building, you're losing money at that point. You're losing opportunity, right? Even at a smaller level, like, as investing in a 401k even, you have to be able to reinvest in yourself different ways. As a salesman, we have to reinvest in ourselves, even if you can't get comfortable there,
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you find it hard in that moment, like, to speak up, but then finally after you walked out, were they like, Brian, you're onto something?
I think it boils down to kind of there's a lot of things that fundamentally, you learn as being a farm kid. You got to figure things out, right? If it's broken, you got to figure out how to fix it. Wrestling, it's just you. It's you against somebody. So it's the work that you put in. I had studied all of our numbers so well, so I knew what the management company would come in and try to do, what they were going to try to pitch on. And I said, here's where they're right and here's where they're wrong and here's where we can do better and here's how we can maximize. And they validated the numbers and they said, we're going to stay with it. And they're still there. They're still run by the county. The challenge is when you contract something out, you're giving your product away to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I said, is that what you ultimately, actually want to have happen? I think one of the other things, to tell listeners is, about using your voice. I remember I was fighting for the opportunity at these senior centers. They had their own separate budgets, but they were in a park. So all these senior centers sat in a park. We always had to plow, and they always had to be first because, the seniors needed it.
Of course.
Yeah. And so everybody could cross-charge. So in big government, they cross-charge money back and forth. Well, we were always net negative. Everybody was taking our money. And I kept fighting. I'm like, they have a budget. I said they should be paying for these services. And I remember I got done with one of the cabinet meetings, so I had to go down with Scott Walker, and there was Tom Nardelli was a general, and he was the chief of staff for Scott Walker, and he ran it like a general. And I had the opportunity to say something, and he was just all over me, and I didn't say anything. And then I get back, and they're like, why didn't you say something? I'm like, he had his finger in my, like he was, like right in my face. I'm like, and I kind of froze. And, I was just like, I didn't say a word. And after that, I'm just like, you know what? I got yelled at by him. Then I got yelled at by them. I'm like, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm going to say my piece. And then I'm going to walk out with my head held high. So I think it's one of those things, too often in our careers, like, do I say something? Do I not say something? How does this actually work? And I was just like, man, I got it from all the ends. And I'm like, I'm not going to take that anymore. I'm not going to go down like that. So
that's interesting.
So you moved to Cleveland in 2010. So tell us about like what the Metroparks were back when you first started and where we're at now.
I analogize it to kind of a sleeping giant. I think it was one of the things where the evolution of the park district, we're now 105 years old, which I think is truly remarkable, the way they were founded. The very first 3 acres were in Rocky River, actually part of a brewing family. So a family that brewed beer, believe it or not, was part of the legacy of how the park district got started. But it's really, I think, this evolution of growth. And when I came here, I think we were known. I think we're much more well known now from a perspective. I think the lakefront changed the narrative. So in 2013, Cleveland Metroparks worked with the city of Cleveland and then Governor Kasich to actually turn over the lakefront park. So we were able to take stewardship of Edgewater Park, East 55th, East 72nd, Gordon, Villa Angela, Euclid, and Wildwood. And it was a really big deal for the community because they had really, I think, fallen out of favor with the state of Ohio. They weren't taking care of it. They weren't cutting the grass. I think the one year they didn't cut the grass until, they didn't cut the grass until like Memorial Day. And I was like, what is going on? I said, this should be the crown jewel of Cleveland, to go and have this lakefront access. And it was hard work. I can remember Joe and I, our COO, we were down at Whiskey Island because we had taken that over the year prior from Cuyahoga County under County Executive Fitzgerald's leadership. And then we ended up picking up a parking lot in Heritage Park 1 as part of that. But we were down at a boat meeting and we went back to Edgewater. We had just gotten it in the first part of May. And we were appalled at the garbage. I mean, it looked like a garbage bomb had blown up. I'm in my suit. Joe's in his suit. We just started picking up garbage. I mean, we literally were picking up garbage. And this one couple was walking by our COO, and he threw a Pringles can, one of those red Pringles cans. I still never forget it, right in front of him. He just looks at me, he goes, bro. And then the girlfriend's like, what are you doing? Like, not to us, but to her boyfriend. She's like, pick that up. And so we eventually got to this culture of cleanliness. It became clean. It became safe. We cleaned the beach with our partners at the sewer district. They sponsored the beach cleaner. They were cleaning it once or twice a year. We were cleaning it every day. And so the renaissance of this park has been absolutely, I think, dramatic. And, that we're here at, Liberty Home Mortgage, right? The property values in the area, they call it the proximate principle, land closer to adjacent to a high quality park, church, or school as a higher value.
Absolutely.
Well, we prove that out in that concept. And so when you see the evolution of the Battery Park area and the new build outs and now the new trails and connections, that's what it's really been about. And so I think it was a well-known, and our marketing team with our new app, Find Your Path, has really, I think, taken it to a whole nother level. Fast forward to the pandemic, the last 2 years, where were the places you could go?
Outdoors.
Outdoors.
Absolutely.
You weren't going to a movie theater. You weren't going, out to dinner, but you could go to the parks. And it took, there's sometimes playbooks, right? There's playbooks on how you do something or how you follow a process. It's like global pandemic, and then there's a blank page. And so you can go back to 1917, 1918, and how many years it kind of took to roll through that. But nothing was the same. Nothing was the same for us. We had to try to keep the zoo, our animals taken care of, the park district. How do we clean things? There were so many unknown things. And our teams just came through. Our core value is guest focus, number one. It's the number one core value. And we were really there for our guests. We closed parts of the park to allow for cycling, which I thought was really pretty cool. So you didn't have to look over your shoulder. Hey, there's a car or this coming. It's like you had free range. Part of Edgewater Park we closed just to try to limit the amount of people, because that was like the place where everybody was flooding to. And then it was counterintuitive. It was like, hey, we got calls from the state. They're like, you're going to have to close. I'm like, close? They're like, yeah, there's too many people in the park. And I'm like, do you know what you just said?
Yeah.
You just said there's too many people in the park. I'm like, that seems like the right thing to do right now.
Exactly.
Have them flood there.
Yeah.
Wow. One thing I noticed is you have like this extreme, I don't even want to say ability, but like this interest in learning about where it is you're going. Before you even, like, first of all, what interested you? Because you said, let me go back. You said it was, when we were walking around, a global search for this CEO job. Mm-hmm. What interested you in Cleveland? And then before you even got here, did you learn all this stuff to know that, hey, it was like, it started in Rocky River with 3 acres from a brewing company and this and that? Like, you take a very, very big interest in where it is you're at. It's almost to the point where I'm like, man, this guy's not even from Cleveland, but he's a Cleveland guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think when you love something, you dig in and you really want to know it. And I think that's the part. I love getting to speak about the park system. I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot. I knew the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was here. I knew that the college football, the Hall of, or not the college, Pro Football Hall of Fame was here. Yeah. I knew that, but I didn't know much about the park district because, again, I built golf courses. I love being outdoors, digging in the dirt. I thought that was, a pretty cool opportunity. And then, from a leadership capacity coming in, the truth, when I was interviewing, I was supposed to tour for a couple hours. Well, I toured with a local, Jim Kostelic, for 8.5 hours. And then I was supposed to interview the next morning at about 11. I'm like, can you pick me up at 7? And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I want to go see more. So I got to see a vast majority of the park district before I ever interviewed. And I ended up changing in my suit in a bathroom, at Park Opera. I'm supposed to go back to I'm like, I don't need to go back there. I said, just grab my stuff. Let's go. Because it was so fascinating when you look at the interconnectedness of this system and the opportunity and its placemaking. And the first kind of all-purpose trail was built in Big Creek, and the amount of neighbors we have and the amount of boundaries. And there's 60-some municipalities in Cuyahoga County. We own land in Lake Lorraine, Geauga, Medina, and Summit counties. The history of the park is so rich, but there isn't a time that I go by that I don't hear a story. That's how we met. I mean, there's always a connection back to this park system. Clevelanders hold their park system much like the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Guardians. They love their sports teams, but I would tell you, we've got second to none our museums, our symphony. Clevelanders have a lot to be proud of.
A lot. Oh, yeah.
Amen.
Like Playhouse Square. I'm pretty sure Playhouse Square is the biggest for arts between New York, Broadway, and San Francisco. Anything in between is Cleveland,
As far as the biggest district, the biggest art district? Yeah, I feel like I've heard that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And people really do. There's not, if you're from Cleveland, you're in the Cleveland Metro, I can't think of a lot of people who don't go to the Cleveland Zoo.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And since we're talking about that, we were talking a little bit before about, the gorilla exhibit and everything. That is absolutely fascinating. So you think it's going to take 5-10 years before we're, the renowned gorilla facility?
I think it's the zoos have had an evolution, I think, in the world. I got a chance to travel to Rwanda to actually see the gorillas in their natural habitat. And it's absolutely fascinating, the landscape, and to see the synthetic pyrethrins that are actually grown, the plants that are growing around them. There's oxen and it's an absolutely rich environment where these gorillas live in their natural habitat. And our goal was to create this world-class gorilla exhibit. At the time, we didn't know we were going to have the very first gorilla in the 139-year history of the zoo. This year, we turn 140. So our campaign is really this Zoo 150 plan, and really how we're going to energize the rainforest. So this iconic 82-degree structure that's been there for 30-plus years. I call it the Pizza Hut. Anybody, do you remember the Pizza Hut glass that used to come off the front?
Yes.
Well, so where I grew up, you'd go out into the garden area, which was this glassed-in area. And so we're going to take that off the current rainforest, and we're going to plug in this new structure. And so the dome structure that sits over where the Super Bowl is going to be, it's an EFT roof. So on top of our current rainforest, there's a new EFT roof. What's magic about that is the light actually, 90% of the light actually comes through, so you can grow real trees in it. And so this facility where the new gorillas will be will actually have this wonderful ability to have trees grow, natural trees. We also traveled to the Manchester Zoo in England and the Emen Zoo in the Netherlands. And what I thought was fascinating about those two locations was here we want stay times, right? Because it does get cold during the winter, and we want people to come to the zoo and stay longer. And they have these wonderful opportunities for kids and families to stay and find respite within this kind of primate forest that was there. One of the coolest things, and I don't know if that was a poster or not, but it was this kid's crawl space up on top. It was a suspension cable bridge. And I crawled up it, just as fast as I possibly could so nobody would say anything. And sure enough, a gibbon, and if you know what a gibbon is, they go, whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
They make these wonderful noises. Well, he followed me back and forth, so I went back and forth, and I just watched him. I'm like, we need this in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I said, we need something like where I'm at their level. Too often you walk through an exhibit and it's ground level and you're looking in and where's the animal and what's going on. So if you see Roseboro Tiger Passage, what happened there was it was this old zoo. It's like the cat's laying in the back, and what do cats do most of the day? They sleep.
Yeah.
And if they're below kind of grade, you can't see them. Cats love to perch. So what do they do now? They perch. And so they're up over the top of you and they can watch you. And so we've really looked at how we evolve the habitats of our animal collection. African elephant crossing was the first example of that. We had 1.3 million visitors come through the zoo this past year. We do Asian Lantern Festival. We do Wild Winter Lights. It's an amazing, iconic location, and we want world-class exhibits for our animals.
So you don't know all this about all the animals and everything like that. So who is on your team that is like the brain as far as like the biologist, the botanist, everything like that, who's like sitting there that you sit around, they present these ideas of how you can make these experiences better. Obviously, you're the innovator that's like, all right, I'm the catalyst, let's make this happen. Who are the brains behind it that you have on your team? And what's it like working with those people as they come up with these fresh ideas to evolve that experience with the animals and everything?
I think what's unique about the Park District, there's over 700 full-time employees, and we have, I think there's over 27 PhDs, people on staff. And so whether they're vets, whether they're, wetland ecologists, whether they're, in our forestry division. So it's, we really try to hire the best of the best. And our head of the zoo is Dr. Chris Kuhar. He was in primatology. He was down at Wake Forest. He actually worked with the folks that work at the Diane Fossey, the gorilla, where Ellen DeGeneres just donated some funds to build this new facility down there. So we have gotten on staff some of the best people. And I will tell you, part of what makes us is, we're really trying to do things authentically for Cleveland, but we're not afraid to go out and look at other things. Again, traveling abroad to see what's going on in other parts of the world, that's extremely important because they have some very unique ideas, and we can, amalgamate them to what work here. So we have an amazing staff, our animal care team that has taken care of the baby gorilla, Baby G. The announcement will be coming up this next week. But they work 24 hours a day to take care of this baby and to see what they can do. They actually, gorillas are human-like. They have a lot of the same tendencies, and we were feeding them a lot of these biscuits. Well, turns out these biscuits were high fructose, a lot of sugars in them, and they were getting diabetes, they were getting heart disease. And so they got them trained to actually eat more green beans, vegetables in our diet. And so they've done some of these wonderful tests and pilots where these gorillas will actually respond. They'll put their arms in for a green bean. We can do blood pressure. We can do blood draws. Our elephants will do some of the same things. They can get their toes polished. Our animal keeper staff is really, really remarkable.
So you mentioned something there about giving them the cookie. I am reading a book right now called The Brain Warrior Way by Dr. Emen, him and his wife, where it's all about like the Brain Warrior Way diet that helps contribute towards how our diet in America is essentially contributing towards early onset of dementia, Alzheimer's, brain fog, low brain function, etc., just overall health. And he literally brings up the two gorillas in the zoo that they were doing those studies on and how they realized that their behavior was 100% different. They were more bitter, they were angry, they were less responsive to the people taking care of them.
Because the food that they were eating.
Because the food, and then they changed because of the high fructose.
Yep.
And then they changed it, and they noticed within 90 days a total behavioral change in the apes.
Just overall, their life.
Overall well-being. They were more responsive. They weren't as angry. They weren't hiding away as much. To me, I have to find it in the book, and I'll let you read the section. They literally bring up the two apes. I forget their names, but
Piccolo was one of them. Yeah.
Yes.
And we've got Freddie, and we've got a whole kind of new group now. But it's pretty remarkable to see that. Sometimes I think you do the easy and not the hard. And the hard was weaning them off of the things that they want. I mean, look, you like sugar, you like a candy bar.
Sure.
Well, they like the same. They
Yeah.
like the same thing. And eventually it was this evolution of, losing kind of that midsection and being more responsive. And I think the complementary thing is that this new gorilla exhibit, I think will be transformational for the zoo. And again, I think it's part and part to appreciate what we're trying to do, but, being able to be out in that space is going to be remarkable.
That's so amazing. How does that set aside from the other zoos in Ohio? Obviously I know the Toledo Zoo and Cincinnati Zoo are also pretty, renowned in the country. So how does the Cleveland Zoo set themselves apart?
I think it's, I keep in mind, we're not in competition with other zoos, right? It's not, so I think it's one of those things where
kind of deal.
We try to collaborate a lot and we're blessed. I mean, the Columbus Zoo is here, the legacy of Jack Hanna. We've got, Toledo, we've got Akron. It's really, we're very rich in the history of being able to, have some things like that. I think we're just trying to set ourselves apart for, what does the animal need? And I think that's the part where even our snow leopards, our red pandas who have been on, the news most recently. So we've been very blessed with the collection, our black rhino breeding program. We moved away from this thing called Monkey Island, which was really pretty historic here in Cleveland, where people used to throw peanuts and marshmallows at the colobus monkeys. Which really wasn't, necessarily a good thing. So that exhibit morphed, and we, added triple the space, and we're actually embarking on a $6.5 million bear exhibit. So we're going to take down the old gunite walls, which are kind of those old kind of historic-looking walls, and move into a whole new exhibit. And then it'll actually have a children's loft inside of it where kids can actually go up and then kind of look down into the exhibit. So
there's more cohesiveness then between the different parks. Then there's really not competition. I love that. That's awesome.
Do you know like who heads them up and everything like that as well, and speak to them regularly and everything?
I don't necessarily, but Dr. Kuhar does. Our head of our zoo was actually just most recently the head of AZA, which is the American Zoological Association. So he's very well known in the zoo world. That's not necessarily, when you have great people, you empower them to do their jobs. And
sure.
Dr. Kuhar, Andy Kornack, and our entire team do an amazing job. So I think that's in leadership too. I think as you evolve, when I was in this little golf course in Michigan, I was running a crew, and it was kind of like my team. And then I went to managing managers at a very young age. And I remember my father, he worked at Northrop King, which was a seed corn company. And I watched him kind of be downsized, kind of out. And I'm like, how would I want, my dad to be treated? And so when I came in, because I was only in my 30s, and a lot of the managers running the golf courses had been there 30 plus years, and to understand their leadership style and what they were trying to do, I think was, something that I had to evolve into and I always kept, how would I want my dad treated? And so those are the kind of the things in leadership. And eventually that, morphed into a higher role in the park, overseeing more, being in the leadership team, and then ultimately being chosen here in 2010 to come here. So leadership styles do adapt kind of over time, and they adapt to the situations that you come across.
So do you think it was hard? Was it difficult trying to come into a place, Cleveland? You've never been to Cleveland before. So coming into Cleveland, you're managing 700 people. Did they see your employees see you as like, or did you feel maybe, am I an outsider? Or, hey, how are these people respect me? I'm supposed to be running, a $24,000 acreage. I have to be able to have these people respect me. Am I an outsider? How was that? Was that difficult? Or did you have those thoughts or not really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's, if you've not lived anywhere else or had to, move, we didn't know anybody when we came to town. And, the institution had the leadership for 22 plus years. So the head of the agency was here. So it was very stable leadership. I think it's interesting, though, too, how you evolve your leadership team, who's behind you, right? When you lead, you can't lead so far that nobody's behind you. And I think evolving a team into what the Metroparks is today. My head of human resources, chief legal and ethics, they've been with me since the start. And I think when you evolve a team and you create trust in what you're doing, I think there's something to be said for that. So, in Cleveland, everybody knows everybody through somebody. And so I think you just kind of learn that. And so my first 3 years here, I don't know if many people even knew who I was. And part of it was just trying to learn, what the fabric of the community was about and be authentically Cleveland. Because, if you come in, I think people know whether you're, really here for the right reasons. And, we've raised a family here and this is where we want to be. And I think that's the fun part of being in Cleveland. And I candidly, when I got recruited here, there was a lot of things that were posted in my office about, why not to go to Cleveland. It's this.
Sure.
And I said, well, if it's truly that, then there's an opportunity to make a difference. And I said, that's why I wanted to come to Cleveland. And, those first 3 years trying to figure it out and then being able to take over Wendy Park Whiskey Island, then Acacia, a former country club being converted back to a 155-acre green oasis over in Lyndhurst, and then taking on the lakefront and, bringing West Creek on and then bringing the trail systems on. We've really pushed hard at evolving this community. And they talk about this 880. If you're 8 years old or 80 years old, you should have a 15-minute walk to a high-quality park. And I think there's this evolution of, how does the city of Cleveland and surrounding cities, whether they're inner ring or more suburban, how do we connect this park district more? And not just here locally. I mean, can we work to Toledo? Can we work down to Columbus? Can we work over to Pittsburgh? Those things, I think, could make us the epicenter in a really unique way.
So aside from the Metroparks, and you've been here for 12 years now, how has Cleveland changed, like, from your perspective? At least from my perspective, I mean, it just seems like there's more of that, love for the city, I guess. Like more people feel like and I don't know, they're more attributed to the city, I guess. They love the city and everything, which I feel like maybe Cleveland was a little bit wasn't like that necessarily 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. I think there's still a gap to build with it. I think I hear far too often like, oh, like there's really not much in Cleveland, this and that, unless you like the bar scene, whatever, this and that downtown. I don't think people get out to a lot of the main features that are out there. Like I from hearing it, like him talk, it's just like there is so much more of an appreciation you can have for Cleveland with all the things out there.
What have you seen then?
I would tell you it's changed for sure. I can say, oh, where are you from? And when I first moved here, I'm like, do I say I'm from Cleveland? Am I from Milwaukee? Am I from Madison? I'm like, what do I say? And I'm
Identity
like,
crisis.
I was just like, I'm like, I'm from Cleveland. They're like, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, I'm not. And so I think I've seen it evolve where people are more proud of the community. And, not that the team ebbs, or the community ebbs and flows with the sports teams, but, when LeBron decided to come back, and I would say Destination Cleveland's work, under Dave Gilbert and that whole leadership team, when I get here, only 23% of local residents would even recommend Cleveland to friends and family. And that's one of the main reasons why people would move, or it may move and or go someplace. Well, we had the Rock Hall, we had all these wonderful things, but our own local residents wouldn't even recommend Cleveland. Now it's over 76% of local residents would recommend coming to Cleveland. Well, figure that's 50%. Well, you take 50%, if I give you, you'd want to see that growth in all of your businesses. And so that evolution of being proud about where you're from, I think, is extremely important. To know that we've got these great cultural assets, and the thought process is, that we're authentically Cleveland, and the whole campaign, we're unapologetic. We are who we are, and if you don't like it, don't come here. But now you hear this resurgence and renaissance of people coming back, and it's like, I want to raise my family here. Why do you want to raise your family here? It's like, because we have some of the best amenities anywhere in the country. We have great quality of life. We have great opportunities for housing stock. So I just get excited about the community because I think it has definitely changed. It's evolved. And there are so many wonderful things to go do.
So if you said in your office when you first got there was a lot of reasons hanging up of like why not to come to Cleveland, and if your experience with Cleveland has been changing that entire perception, you're a very opportunistic individual. I could just sense that about you, and I think it's clear through your words spoken. What's the opportunity moving forward that keeps you excited about still being in the position you are, and what's the vision for the Metropark system and the golf courses and the zoo and everything like that moving forward that's going to continue to elevate the experience for individuals in this area?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question because it's we kind of plan in these 10-year cycles, and we're in the 9th year of the last 10-year cycle. So we're evolving into this thing, the new 10-year strategic plan, and it talks about conservation, so protecting land. So we'll continue to look for land opportunities to grow the park district. We'll look for ways to innovate, to be creative, whether it's the drive-through concept, whether it's time ticketing, some of these things that we had not done before, whether it's connections. And I think that's one of the things where it shouldn't be lost in our community of how do we connect more. I mean, people want to be close to the park district now. When you look at the evolution of the build out of Battery Park, like I mentioned, now you look at Scranton. Well, that's all near the trails that we've just most recently built. And I think that is a testament to people want to be near, an amenity like that. So there are so many exciting things that we're looking at. We're looking at an opportunity in East Cleveland, in the historic Forest Hills Park. We're looking at some land out in Solon to make another really kind of unique connection. What I find is we were built off this riparian system. So going back to how we were founded, we were, off Rocky River. And so we got land, Rocky River Reservation, Millstream Run Reservation, the Chagrin River. What I found interesting was that William Stinchcombe, our founder, worked for Mayor Tom Johnson at the time. And he said, I want this, world-class, boulevard system of parks. Well, go to our website and look at the map from 1917 and look at the map from 2021, now 22. About 75% of what was originally drawn is completed. And that's been the testament. So there's only been 5 other heads of the agency. There's only been 9 probate judges, who's our appointing authority, and 36 park commissioners. So we're really proud of the legacy of the park district, but we're now in that 2nd century of stewardship. And so how do we evolve? How do we innovate? How do we create new connections? I think a lot of it is going to be through this trail network. We're working with communities in Cleveland, small little neighborhoods like Slavic Village. How do we connect down Broadway? Broadway takes you down to the Progressive Stadium. How do we go from East 9th Street by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame all the way out to Gordon Park? Well, Gordon Park takes you to MLK. MLK is the Cultural Gardens. Where does that take you? To University Circle. So, and then Opportunity Corridor has a trail coming out the other side, and you can go back. So I think these next 100 years will evolve into more connections to community and place here in this community.
That's awesome.
And that's one thing, I mean, just by the Elevate Cleveland podcast, right? When we were brainstorming the name and everything. So when we were brainstorming the name, we were just like, we wanted to be very Cleveland-esque, you know, because we love our city and we want other people to understand, like, you guys live in an amazing town, and we want people to understand, like, this is a central hub for innovation, you know, and we want to be able to put that on a platform.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so
right.
I really hope that all these other projects are going to be able to have people outside of Cleveland talk about our city. You know, not just sports, not just, you know, how the Browns aren't doing too hot. You know what I mean?
Whatever might be right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are there other projects other than just, you know, through the Metro that you're working on as well to help elevate the city itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's one that Metro Health is building out $1 billion, new hospital. And it's a mile between the Metro Health Hospital and the Metroparks where the zoo is. And so, how do we look at, a connection there? I think if we do our part well, from a quality of life standpoint, I think more people, there have been times when we've recruited help from Sherwin-Williams or Swagelock or others. And a lot of times the park is the great equalizer. It's like, well, I can do this here. I can see myself here. And I think that's always the thing. Can I see myself living in this community when you're being recruited from someplace else? And that can be a great equalizer. But we've got, great employers, that include Lincoln Electric, Sherwin-Williams, and a host of others. We want to do our part to be very complimentary, to be able to move things forward. And, this past year we were named the best park district in the nation. So we were the national gold medal winner. We also won the national award for social equity. And that was really created by the Tiger Trails, which is not something that's related to the zoo. It's actually transportation investment generating economic recovery. And that was part of the Red Line Greenway project that we actually brought 6 distinct communities, neighborhoods and 60,000 residents to a trail experience that actually then connects to the towpath. The towpath connects back into the park district. So I think you'll continue to see, it's kind of like tying your shoe, right? You start with a piece, you just start working it through. Those are the things that we're going to continue to do and evolve. We worked with our partners at Western Reserve Land Conservancy to connect Brighton Park, which was an old landfill. That goes over to the Treadway connector. Treadway drops you right down to the towpath. So you're starting to see more of these pieces that are more stackable, which I think is really, truly important.
Yeah. I mean, you even said earlier, like, cost of living. And I mean, there are just so many reasons to come to the city. It's like, listen, it's not like, Florida, you're going to have hurricanes, right? Or you're going to be in, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, you're going to have a bunch of, tornadoes, right? Or you go in San Francisco, I'm not even going to list how many problems there are going to be.
Right.
In Cleveland, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't. The cost of living is so much smaller than, the average of the United States, right? Like a $500,000 house here in Ohio gets you a lot. As comparatively speaking to San Francisco or New Jersey or New York.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, that's why we made the podcast.
I think there's like a forgotten appreciation for like the nature that we preserve as well. There is an individual who he lives next. He's the landlord. He's the landlord of the house next to my aunt in Lyndhurst. I live in Lyndhurst as well, right? So when you mention Acacia, I know exactly where you're talking. And right across from the mall there, right? Right off the highway? Yeah, I know exactly where you're talking.
Cedar Road.
Yep, that's right. And my aunt lives a hop, skip, and a jump up. And he's from down south, but then I think spent a lot of time in Thailand. And over the summer, we were talking one time because we went over to the house to like fix a little leak on the toilet or something like that. And we were sitting outside, like just tossing the football on Sunday before dinner, whatever, my cousins and I. And we were talking with him. And, we said, like, what's your biggest appreciation about Cleveland? Like, why Cleveland? And he goes, look down this street and look at all the trees. He goes, I've been in a lot of cities in all of this country and outside of this country. He goes, Cleveland keeps their trees. He goes, all the neighborhoods have trees. All the streets have trees. He's like, you guys are like a bird infirmary where you keep all of like the homes there for the birds. He's like, that is one of the biggest things I love about Cleveland, Ohio, and Northeast Ohio is the fact that you guys preserve your nature and make it a part of like your lives. Well,
it's interesting. We're called the Emerald Necklace, the Emerald City, trees. I mean, it's tied, all of those things together. There's an interesting group called the Cleveland Tree Coalition, and they're about reforesting. And when you look at the health and vitality of the city, it comes and goes with the air quality. And air quality is, sequestered by, the carbon sequestered through the trees. So, it's kind of this complete thing. I got to sit on Mayor Bibb's transition team, and he's going to make a dedicated a line to rebuild the street tree infrastructure, and that's going to be extremely important from greenhouse gas emissions and the collective nature of how this community continues to grow. Preserving 24,000 acres, there's actually almost 80,000 protected acres between all of the communities surrounding us. And then to have access to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, I think shouldn't be forgotten. It's one of the top 10 visited national parks in the country. It's between Cleveland and Akron. You can access it through the towpath. It's right off of I-80, and that should be, one of the things that we should be proud about, because people come through, they drop their bikes off, they go for a bike ride in the Cuyahoga Valley, they come through the Cleveland Metroparks, maybe the Summit Metroparks, but it's just this neat evolution of green space. And I can tell you time and time again, it's like the very first thing I do when people fly in, they drop right down into the Metroparks, drop right into Rocky River, and so they'll go north, they'll go south, they'll spend time there. My neighbor just moved from Colorado, and he goes, what I love about Cleveland is, one, the parks, and two, he goes, we can have all 4 seasons here.
Exactly.
Sometimes you get them in one day, but he said, it's just like that's one of the things that he appreciates is the seasons.
So I can't imagine the entire ride for you. I mean, we've talked about a lot of positives. What have been some challenges that you have faced in the position you're in here in Cleveland, or maybe challenges that you face today that we're facing as a city, and kind of your plans to work through them?
I think one of the things that I think the pandemic has refocused a lot of people's priorities and their value of their work. I'm not quite exactly sure how it's going to play out yet. I'm not a firm believer in this work from home atmosphere. Yeah. I think there's a place for these hybrid programs, but if I can't see somebody for like months on end that work for the system, I don't know how culturally you stay exactly where you want to be as an agency. How do you hold things together? And when you hear, folks, large employers, moving 700 employees that used to be in a building, out to, they wake up and they work in their pajamas for the day. Mm-hmm. I'm just not so sure how that is at a long-term, great effect on people's mental health. And so I'm glad the Park District is here for that. Number two, the work ethic of America, I think, is changed to a certain degree. I'm not exactly sure where we used to hire 1,700 seasonals. Last year, I think we hired 600. So, where did 1,100, plus we used to have 5,000-6,000 applications where people would come and want summer jobs. And certainly, we had probably a pay gap issue where we had to compete. I think the flexibilities that the DoorDashes allow for now that, I can punch in, clock in at like 11
the gig
o'clock.
Economy.
Yep,
yeah.
The gig economy. I can work for 3 hours, make $60-$70. My parents are happier than little lambs. I went and did something, and then I have the rest of the time. Do you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and, go on a greens route or, pick garbage or clean toilets? But, those are the things that the Park District needs. So I think we're going to need to, evolve our workforce. We have this thing called OWLS, Older Workers Leading Success. So I think people that maybe are starting to age out of their traditional job that may want to have like a second career, maybe being a golf starter or, maybe, in our research division or marketing, I think we're going to have to evolve what that looks like to be competitive. We have a number of restaurants and opportunities. How do we continue to, fund and make those profitable? We created the Noshery over at Huntington Beach. We sell lots of ice cream there in the activity level, but we're in an on-demand world, and so it's like, how do we evolve that? So there are some extreme challenges that we'll be faced with, I think, coming forward.
The workforce is one that is on my mind. Really, just being able to work from home. It really does. I truly believe it does hurt your culture because, again, when Laura Volpini was on last week, we were just talking about the exchanging of ideas, even if it's not work-related. Not work-related ideas, you could have a business that becomes of that. You just don't have that value over a Zoom call. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like that definitely is a big hindrance to...
There's pros and cons to it for sure. Absolutely. But as far as, like, trying to create a cohesive environment, I think there's a big part that is missing there, obviously, I mean, I got to walk around your facility today, and I think it's, how you've evolved and how you've created these kind of like niche little areas, but you're meeting people where they need to be maybe met at. And I think that's the evolution of the workplace. And, some are harder than others, right? I mean, we have people that are elephant keepers and, they're a dangerous animal. And, there's things that, we can do and we can't do. And
I think that's where, we're going to need to continue to stay, really true to our mission of how we're conserving land, how we're protecting, how we're doing things. But we had a recruit that we were looking at from Boston, and I won't, give any names, but they wanted us to film how they would arrive at the office, how they would walk into, where would they sit, where would they eat lunch, where's the common space. They wanted us to film like all of this, and I'm just like, what has literally happened?
What do you mean, like a POV tutorial? Like, hey, this is what you're gonna do.
Like a fly through of how I would arrive at the office and where I would go and where do I sit and how do I work? And I'm like, are you guys ranking me right now? What is
you come
actually
here,
going on?
you sit here, all right, go to the bathroom, and then come back, get lunch.
Is that like dead on, like serious? Is that like a social anxiety thing? Like, was he or she nervous about?
I don't know.
What was the reasoning?
I think it's just there's an evolution of do I see myself there?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That was one of the things we couldn't really figure out exactly. But it's there's people that choose to be part of the culture. They choose to be part of the mission, connecting to nature, serving communities, growing the conservation of the world, and that's who we are. So we're going to stay true to our mission. We're not going to evolve away from that, but we want people that really want to be with us. And certainly I think we've had to be flexible. A lot of in the space where database administrators, you can work for just about anybody. What makes us different, and those are the things that we're trying to continue to find along the way.
Awesome. So how are we doing on time, guys?
We're about 52.
52 minutes. Great. As we kind of move towards, the consummation of this year, it's been absolutely awesome. I'm absolutely interested in so much that you've brought up.
Very Cleveland-y.
Yeah, very Cleveland-y is right. Yeah. I have to ask, like, for you, as far as your life, you have a family here in Cleveland, right? Do you have children?
Mm-hmm. One boy. Mm-hmm.
One boy, okay. You don't seem like a workaholic kind of guy for me. You seem like you have a decent amount of balance, and obviously nature's a big part of it, and fortunately you get to work in that, obviously. I know you work in an office, but of course that is your environment, is what you're overseeing. What does life outside of work look like for you, for your family, and all things related?
I think there's in leadership sometimes it's hard it's like tug of war, finding this unique balance. I don't think we all knew that we were on a wheel as much as we were until COVID actually hit. And it was almost like riding your bike and a stick gets just shoved right in and you kind of like topple over. And everybody kind of like wakes up and it's like, wow, all the things that we were doing, it's like, why? I'm like, when I was running here, I had to go here, I had to get this, I had to get that. It's just like, you just didn't really realize what was actually going on in your life. And then you got this gong upside the head and you're just like, wow, what's important and what's the fabric of things. And, I don't think early on I was very good with the work-life balance. And, I think raising, a son here in a new community and my wife, I give her all the credit in the world for, helping, shepherd him through his school and at St. Ambrose and other things. It's just, I think it's a challenge. And I think now it's this unique balance of, working smarter as best you possibly can. The connectedness, my phone's ringing, I probably have lots of things you do. It's different how you can work now, and the acceptableness of, having some virtual things and, not having to be present. And I don't miss all the rubber chicken dinners, that you go to all these events and it's just like, wow, if I eat one more of these, and now they found more creative ways to do things. So I think finding that balance of, here's what we know, we don't get out of this alive, right? And so at some point in time, you've got to find this balance and, being able to have some, outdoor space and have these unique opportunities to have, a small farm and to be able to create some of these things that have some purpose to them. I think it's been kind of fun, but I do love what I get to do every day, and I love the team, and I love this community, and I love the podcast. It just says Elevate Cleveland, and it's like, why not? Why not more of that? And to be able to talk about the wonderful things that this community does have, and it's always I think we should have a little chip on our shoulders, and we should always be pushing that rock up that hill a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make people want to talk about us. You know what I mean? Just by doing we're a hard working class people. You know what I mean? So with the chip on the shoulder, 100%. Even people like you or CEOs or people that we've had on the podcast, predominantly in the Cleveland area, there's so many interesting people. So many interesting people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go to all of these like big name cities and everything when you have such great leadership and so many cool things that are going on right in our backyard.
Such great industries too. I couldn't think of, I literally feel your passion for what it is you do and the job that you do every single day and what you oversee on such a grand level. like I can feel it. Like I don't think there's any better person, especially from like an outsider coming in to Cleveland to learn so much about the city to where you genuinely consider it being like home for you now. I think that's special. I think that's special. And I would say, I mean, only 6 individuals have ever been in your position. I pray that, it's a testament. Absolutely. I pray the next person is just as passionate about it as you, you know?
I think, you know, when you know, we talk about wrestling and having some level of tenacity, there's got to be passion and purpose behind what you do. And when you have those things, you can lean in. And when you get a coalescence of people that start believing the same things. And you know, prior to the pandemic, you know, Cleveland was on a tremendous trajectory. Not that it still isn't. I mean, we've got the All-Star game coming up here. We've gotten to showcase, you know, the draft, the NFL draft, you know, down at our lakefront. We've gotten to host an MLB All-Star game. We've had the national, you know, wrestling here. We've had all sorts of wonderful events. So I think there's a lot of things to be proud of here in Cleveland. And again, I love to get to know new people and challenge and, you know, speak to the virtues of what's going on in Cleveland.
So my last question really is just, so I got to imagine, man, you're making hundreds of decisions every day, right? A lot of people look to you for leadership. So you have to be able to, you know, more often than not, get out of your comfort zone and make tough decisions. So, you know, how do you go about making these decisions and everything?
Well, I can tell you some of them are pretty quick. Some of them are, it's like you can see exactly the forest through the trees. You can see exactly where you need to go. And there are others where, you know, there's this gap that I use. It's like, you know, put your head on the pillow and think about it, you know, for a night. And, you know, some of these decisions, you know, long-term strategies or, you know, whether it's an employment issue, you really need to kind of think through. And we have a very strong leadership team between our marketing team and our operations. And, you know, you bounce ideas off. And I think you can't be afraid to, you know, to have those levels of conversations. I think the best thing you can do is hire people smarter than you and empower them to do their jobs. And, you know, my job as the leader isn't to be that smartest person in the room. And it's to get the best out of people and challenge them. And when you create a culture like that, it's fascinating to see the evolution of it. And, you know, when you have a top down where it's like, well, you know, whatever the boss says, it's like mushrooms, you know, kept in the dark and fed shit. You know, that's kind of what you end up getting. And so, you know, this whole concept of elevating and really being responsive to people and hiring the right people for the right jobs at the right time for the right pay, it matters. It really, truly matters.
So then your leadership style, at least if I had to guess, your leadership style is very, you are, I could tell the individual where you'll step up and make the decision when you have to, and you'll take charge of whatever needs to be done. But at the same time, you trust the individuals that you hire to do their job because you've placed them and hired them to do so. Listen to their ideas. Listen to what they have to do because they're the expert in those areas. It sounds like you don't have to be the expert in every single field. You hire those people for that reason. And I think those are the most effective leaders, are not the people that are trying to steer the ship, mop the floor, you know, handle every single job on the boat, but the individual who just knows, okay, I'm the captain just overseeing this all. I have my crew who is taking care of a specific section, and I trust them to do their job and a good job at that. And to mess up and, you know, and have their failures and this and that, but to trust them overall.
Yeah, it's the opportunity to grow, right? You
That's
know,
right.
some of them are going to go really well. And you can't have Gumby leadership where you're kind of getting bent in, you know, 17 different directions. You've got to have, you know, that structure and the command. And, you know, I think that, again, you know, a lot of the things that we've talked about, you know, growing up on a farm, you know, wrestling and taking ownership and accountability and then using your voice. I mean, when we go back to the early parts of the podcast, it's like, I can remember specifically 2 kind of life-changing events and, you know, that's gotten me to come to Cleveland. You know, one, I spoke exactly what I needed to do. And the other one, you know, I kind of froze, to be quite honest. It was one of those things where it's like, wow, this is something I wanted. And, you know, this individual, and it's just like, you know, why didn't I fight back? And why didn't I use my voice? And I think as you grow in the ranks of leadership, it's like, you know, again, being respectful, but, you know, getting your point across and being able to do that, to being able to lead and being able to create a team. And, you know, it's the bus concept, get them on and get them off. And so make sure you keep the right people on the bus and get the wrong people off the bus along the way.
I like that.
Awesome.
I like that. Well, as we work towards the end here, we always kind of like to ask one final question. Any piece of advice that you would give to a young individual maybe coming out of high school who's maybe, you know, not going the path of college, or an individual coming out of college who is stepping into the workforce? Maybe they have an idea to start their own business or to step into a role where they want to eventually build their ladder as well to get into the position that you might be in, or just any life advice in general, business, life, anything related. What's your one or your 2 cents of advice?
There's a lot of things, and sometimes I talk fairly fast because I'm very passionate about things. And one of the bosses I worked for at the golf course, the very last thing, and I had worked there through high school. I started there at 15 and left, after college. And he goes, you were given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. He goes, use them accordingly. He goes, listen first and speak second. And too often, I think we want to try to, overthink or overtalk. And so when you listen, you can actually hear. And I think this evolution of, wearing a mask, you can't see people's emotions. So there's a level of communication that happens through your body language and how things go. And we've been missing that for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, the levels of emotional intelligence. I think the other thing too is that I've challenged myself in my time here that, I've been on a few boards. One included Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. And it was really about promoting neighborhood vitality and how the Cleveland neighborhoods, the distinct ones, whether it's, Ohio City, Buckeye, all the different communities and how do we promote that? I had really no business being on that board. I mean, I didn't understand community development corporations, block grants. I didn't understand any of that. But once I got involved, it was just like, this is really, an opportunity to lean into something that was out of my comfort zone. So when you're out of your comfort zone, you grow. And so there's an opportunity to lean into something. So, don't be afraid to step out of it. And if you have an idea, you have the ability to make those decisions and make those changes. And, people, whether they decide to go, in college, out of college, there are a tremendous amount of successful people that didn't go to college. And, that's not the be all end all. So sometimes, your path, you got to figure out, where it is. And it's not the destination, it's the journey by which you get there.
Amen. Brian, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you,
Brian. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Elevate Cleveland podcast. Dominic, wrap it up for us.
As Chris stated at the beginning of this podcast, we are licensed loan originators for the best mortgage company in the land. That is Liberty Home Mortgage. Guys, if you or anybody is looking to purchase or refinance a home, doesn't matter if you've done this 1, 10, or 100 times, call us, email us. The email is in the description below. Reach out to that email. In the subject line, put looking to purchase / refinance a home. Whatever it is your goal is, Chris and I will reach out to you within 24 hours, and we look forward to helping you with whatever it is your specific home goal is. Thank you.